make sure this band happens for these kids.
Let's go play. Let's show them who the Knights of Swing really are.
Gordon. All right. Emilio, I'm so stoked to be talking with you about Knights of Swing. I watched it this morning on Tubi, and it was such a great movie. It just kept me intrigued. I didn't realize it was 2.5 hours long, but once you get into the story, it went by so quick.
Thank you for saying that. I've heard that from so many people. And by the way, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So my first question is, what got you into swing music? Because I also noticed you did a lot of composing of the songs.
Well, I co-wrote some of the material, but I orchestrated and arranged all of it because I have such an extensive background in big band music. Growing up, I started playing in bands when I was very young in upstate New York. Started playing in 6th grade, played through high school, and played what we call GB gigs or casuals, weddings, parties, and that. And then I auditioned and was accepted to Fredonia State University, which is just outside of Buffalo. And they had a fantastic jazz ensemble program there. And fortunately, I was elected to be in the band when I was a freshman. And then I ran the entire program from my sophomore, junior, senior year. And then I got a graduate assistantship and taught at the college also. So I have a real heavy background in big band jazz. I have stacks of charts that I've written out by hand and pencil. Now I use my computer, which is a lot easier, but there's something visceral about using a pencil and a score paper and writing out the parts. I cherish those charts that I spent all that time doing back in upstate New York. But it's interesting. Some friends of mine who were in the Fredonia Jazz Ensemble recently communicated with me, and they took all my scores and scanned them all so that they wouldn't get lost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they've been at least immortalized in some way digitally.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how I got my big background in big band jazz. We were fortunate at the university to have some of the greatest big bands come to Fredonia State and do concerts and clinics with us. And in the 5 years that I was there, we had Stan Kenton's band, Woody Herman's band, Count Basie's band, Maynard Ferguson's band, and did I say Woody Herman?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Thad Jones, Mel Lewis's band from New York. So, and he was one of my idols. So it was great to hear and see that live. Each one of those bands spent 3 days with us at the school, and it was just an incredible hands-on experience. So that's where I get a lot of my my big band jazz background, just because I love the music too.
Yeah, I like it too. Here I'm only in my 40s, but I'm a huge fan of any music, but I really love the big band now and again. And watching this movie just was so inspiring, and just kept me going. But how'd you get involved with the film?
Well, the executive producer who actually wrote the original story, named Roland Jacks, by the way, it's his birthday today. He's 89 years old.
Oh, wow. Well, happy birthday if he's hearing this.
I'll make sure. So Roland and I have been friends for about 21 years, and I've done projects with him. The first project I did with him was orchestrating and arranging a musical that he wrote called Busy. And then he wrote a lot of contemporary Christian songs, Broadway type songs, and then some songs that I did with big band or with the Andrews Sisters type of sound. And so in February of 2018, he sent me Schoolroom Blues, which is the first song you hear in the movie. And he said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Well, this would make a great big band tune." And so I arranged it for big band, and he loved it. He sent me Love Is Ours Tonight, and then he sent me the Victory Stomp. And well, he only had part of Victory Stomp written, so I co-wrote the rest of it with him. So it started off with just the music, but then Roland wrote a whole 10-episode series of the Knights of Swing that we started off thinking that it would be a series, and we did a pilot episode, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So we waited. We finished doing that pilot. The time elapsed between casting and pre-production, all that, between February of 2018 all the way. We finished the pilot in June of 2019, and then we put that all together. We went to AFM, the American Film Market. We met and talked with a lot of distribution people, and then in January we said, okay, well, we were thinking that in January we'd start to film again, and then COVID was just all full bore at beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
So we waited, and then we finally filmed the rest of the movie. We decided to not make it episodic. We decided to make it a feature film. We filmed the rest of the movie during the end of 2020, and filmed in October, November, December, then January, and then in March of 2022, or I'm sorry, 2021, we finished the principal photography. Then we edited the movie, got all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. We made some connections with distribution companies, but it wasn't until the beginning of March 2022 where we released the movie, and then got distribution, which is just happening really right now.
Yeah.
We're on Tubi, as you saw it, which I think it looks great on Tubi, doesn't it?
It does. It actually does. I mean,
Yeah,
it was
really pleased.
yeah, it was so bright and everything. And I gotta say, one thing impressed me with this movie is the cast. I mean, these young were they actually musicians like that, or were
most of them, yes.
Because that wasn't very impressive. It felt really authentic that they casted these musicians who can also act. I mean, these guys did an amazing job. This young cast, and I can't say well enough for them. They did such an amazing job, and I love the fact that you made Richard Neal's character the brother of Glenn Miller. I mean, Glenn Miller's like God, and here he is like his older brother, kind of like taking the reins for him. I think that was a brilliant idea with that.
Yeah, that was Roland's idea, and we really had fun with that, because so many people who watched the movie didn't think of Miller and Glenn Miller until it comes to the trombone thing, and it's like, what an Easter egg that was, to find that out. Oh, spoiler alert.
Oh no, it's okay, because what I also didn't realize, well, you kind of knew, because when he opens they call him Mr. Miller, and he's opening the photograph book. I already put two and two together right there when I saw Glenn Miller, and I'm like, that's got to be his brother. Like I knew, yeah. I was like, that's got to be his brother. So I picked it up like even before that scene, but I like the fact that they didn't know until later in the movie. The students,
it was a surprise. Thank you.
And I gotta say, you as the principal was just great. I mean, that you just went head in with your role of King Arthur, so to speak. I mean, that was just amazing.
It's kind of right up my alley. I actually played the principal in another movie before that a few years earlier called Expelled, which is kind of an homage to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I play the principal of the school in that one. So that, between my jazz piano playing and that, it was a lot of fun. Roland actually wrote that role for me.
Yeah, I could see why. And, I like the fact that when you do your announcements, you're playing there, you are on the piano, like right there, that shows like that level of respect between you and the students. And
thank you. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, you mentioned Richard Neal, who plays Mr. Miller. We were in another movie together prior to that called Prodigy, that's on Apple TV right now, and it's kind of a sci-fi thriller, but not gory. Very, very, really well made movie, and I play a horrible person in that movie. I play this really mean military colonel, but Richard and I became friends from that movie, and then when it came time to cast Mr. Miller, Roland had watched Prodigy, and he said, well, that guy's so great. He's got such a great personality and very kind of fatherly. Why don't you have him do it? So I said, absolutely. I love, we get along great as friends. And so it was a lot of fun. And you kind of feel that, I think, in the movie, our friendship comes across on screen.
Oh yeah. Especially when you're called Mr. Nutcase. I mean, that part I knew right away. Like, yeah, these guys have to have known each other before. I mean, that's what made it work. The chemistry is so natural in this movie. I mean, that's what helps. Like sometimes you watch these ensemble casts and like they feel forced, so it doesn't feel as good. It does, it just kind of hinders the movie. But this is one case where everything just flows, and it just did such a tremendous job.
Thank you. Well, there's so many aspects. It's Albert, right?
Yeah,
Albert, because it doesn't say it on it just says you.
right.
Yeah, but I remember that it was you. And by the way, I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this with us, and that you're so effusive about the movie and that you really enjoy it. That means a lot to me. Really appreciate that. But yeah, getting Richard and getting those different individuals was the camaraderie grew because we actually rehearsed with the actors in the first year that we were putting it together. We went through a few different people that didn't quite gel together, and then when we found these guys, they really enjoyed being with one another. They had a fun time hanging out. They went when we were filming a couple of the nights. They all went out bowling together, and they really developed that sense of camaraderie that comes across in the movie. And I'm really glad that you pointed that out. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that it tackles real topics too, like racism. In the case of Wesley, it's like PTSD in his case because he came back from the war feeling angry. Like so he went. He must have gone through something traumatic during the war where he just felt really mad and he took it out on everyone. Especially the one person who cared about him the most, his brother. And then we have, of course, Mrs. Lubitsky. She just. Man, she was a handful.
Yeah.
Until the one moment where the last person she ever expected to save her daughter did, and that
spoiler alert.
Yep, spoiler alert. She changed her tune completely about how she felt.
Amanda Lamberti is a fantastic actress, and we've been friends. We were actually in acting workshops together, and that's where I met her, and I knew she would be perfect to play Mrs. Barlutsky because she has such an ability to play both ends of the spectrum of being that really harsh and callous person and also be a very tender and loving person. And I think the chemistry between her and her husband and the way she really has quite an arc of change that she goes through in that movie. And so do many of the characters, but her transition is, and so is Wesley, the older brother.
Them too, yeah.
We and I think it's palpable. You really feel that these people grew through the situation. And I'm really glad that you brought up the aspect of PTSD and racism because they were all very, very, very real things in 1947. The attitude, if you recall, Black people were not allowed to use the same restroom, sit at the same counter, same drinking fountain. And then what these young men, went through in the war was horrific. And a lot of them brought, like in that scene where he says, "I heard the people screaming." And it really shows the juxtaposition between him and his younger brother, where he says, "But you wouldn't even understand. You were here,
right?
You don't even."
The playing reminded him of the air sirens, and that's like a trigger. Yeah, that's exactly why I knew right away. I was like, that's PTSD he's suffering from. I was like, it's something you pick up, and then not just the colored people, but you have a Asian member in the group band as well. Shinji, and he must have suffered through some ordeal as well because you got to remember, for those who remember. Japan was our enemy during World War II, but now once they surrendered, everything started coming back. So I mean that he must have endured something like that as well, considering.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is that we also have girls in the band, which was not really very common during that. But if you do the research, there were actually entire big bands made up of women because the men were away in World War II fighting, and so the music kept on with all girl bands. So we represent something very historic in that. And it's funny you brought up the anti-Asian sentiment. My wife is half Japanese, and her mom was born in Yokohama, and her dad was a trombone player in the officers band in during the Korean War. My mother-in-law was the interpreter for the band. They fell in love, came back to America, and they were one of the first interracial war couple after World War II. And my wife and brother-in-law grew up with a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment when they were growing up, because people, this is not, 1954. Her parents got married in 1952, and things were still fresh coming off of. There were still internment camps here, and so there was a lot of anti-Asian, especially anti-Japanese sentiment. So, yeah, we tried to show that music brings people together, and that the healing power and the camaraderie that comes from playing can't come from anywhere else, because music is the language of emotion, and it's the language of understanding. And I actually did my thesis in college about music being the language of emotion, and I learned a great deal researching that, about what sounds trigger different feelings in people, what tempos, what keys, and so when you add all of that together, like Mr. Miller says in the film, he says, I think that the band is like a refuge. It's almost like their home. And then I jokingly say to him, "You sure you're not talking about yourself?" Because he finds such a great feeling of warmth and camaraderie between the students and him, which I think Richard did a fantastic job portraying.
Oh, he did. And I like the fact that first he was reluctant to do it, and then it was once he remembers his brother, that's when he's like, in a way, it's like he's paying respects to his brother by doing this, and that's what made it work. But I totally agree. There's been a lot of great underdog films. Of course, we talk about a lot of sports films. Very rarely do you get an underdog in music film, like, with the exception of maybe Whiplash, was a recent one. Whiplash is I felt like it was an underdog film. This kid.
I actually took my cues. In fact, I even stole a line from Sister Act, because they were the ragtag group of girls that end up going to the competition in the end. And there's one scene where the Mormon Tabernacle type choir comes out, and they all regimentally turn, and we kind of stole that idea where Nolan, the piano player, says they're like a machine. Yeah. And they actually said that in Sister Act too.
I do remember that.
I had to use that, but that's that thing you do. Remember the Tom Hanks movie?
Yeah.
That I took my cues from that, and from Fame and Sister Act, Whiplash, all of those films where the ragtag group of guys get to kind of pull through in the end, and the music is what unites them, and that's what I think is really powerful about the Knights of Swing.
Yeah, that's what I really liked, because kind of like a spoiler alert, but when the Knights of Swing play in the Battle of the Bands, their arch I'm just saying, the arch nemesis, they start hearing one of the songs, and they all start popping up, like, holy cow, these guys are actually they gave us some competition. So I think that's that level of respect there, and I think that's what really makes a film like this worth watching.
Thank you. We just got a review yesterday, and we were kind of afraid, because typically Rotten Tomatoes is pretty mean and can be kind of cruel, and they gave us a really nice review. In fact, one of the things they said is, this movie is, if you have patience, this movie is really worth watching. And they singled Richard and I out for our roles in it, and I was very pleased with that. That they said the movie was really worth watching, gave us their stamp of approval, which we've been kind of waiting for. And because we've won so many awards already with this movie, in Paris, London, Milan, Italy, Florence, and then a couple of other festivals in New York, and there's been at least Rome. There's we won Best Picture in all of those festivals, and we're really happy that the general public is enjoying this. We're getting great reviews, and it's just starting to have a life of its own. It's probably going to be on Apple TV and Amazon Prime within the next week or two, because they've already accepted it, and they just have to make it go live. So I really like Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even though it's 2.5 hours long, like I said, once you get into a story, it doesn't feel like it's 2.5 hours long. And that's exactly how I felt with this movie. It just kept me intrigued and kept me wanting to watch it and see what happens to these, see what obstacles these guys have to overcome. And like I said, I absolutely loved this movie. It was so great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to all of us. We put our heart and souls into this movie, and one of the most important things is, and I can tell that it probably touched your heart. And there's something about this movie. It's a feel good movie. There's not a lot of feel good movies out there, really, that you could watch with your family, and and you had mentioned Tubi, because I'm really really pleased with how the look and the sound of the movie is on Tubi, and I'm also very impressed with the artificial intelligence that they have that picks the commercials that go with the movie, because they were all very tasteful and really appropriate to the genre, family oriented type of products, with claymation or whatever, and fun family things. And I was very, very, very pleased to see that the commercials were not annoying to watch, and there wasn't really that many of them. So
No, exactly.
I'm very, very happy with that platform. They really did us a solid. I'm very pleased with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope people do get to check it out. It is playing right now, and I hope people do get to see. But finally, what's next for you? Is there any new projects you're working on that you could talk about?
Absolutely. We're in the same entire crew of people, including Roland Jacks as the writer and executive producer. We're working on a faith-based film that's going to we're going to be finished. We want to have it out by Easter of 2024. And it's called 47 Days. It's the last 47 days of Christ's life on earth. But it's told as a musical, kind of like Jesus Christ Superstar. But that story is told within another story where the family gets together every year at Easter. And my son and daughter-in-law in the story, I play the grandfather. My son and daughter-in-law are having a really hard time in their marriage. And by me telling the story to them and their two young kids, and then my daughter and my son-in-law and their two kids, the whole family situation ends up having what they hear in the biblical story affect their present day life. So the movie exists at two time periods at the same time. It's a very adventurous film. It's going to be a tremendous amount of work. I was just doing a script editing session with David Guttel, who I have to give big shout out, because he co-directed Knights of Swing with me, and we co-wrote the screenplay with Roland for the Knights of Swing, and we did the same thing for 47 Days. The three of us wrote that screenplay together, and it's Roland's songs, my arrangements again. Darlene Koldenhoven, who did all the vocal arrangements, did the vocal arrangements for these, and she actually, it's kind of funny
one of the Nuns and Sister Act. Yeah, she played one of the Nuns and Sister Act. Now that I think about it, I recognize that name.
Yeah, and she also arranged all the choir stuff for Sister Act.
Oh wow!
So that's our relationship goes back. We've done work on projects for over 30 years together, and so as soon as after the Knights of Swing, I said, well, you've got to do 47 Days too. So she's a Grammy Award-winning vocalist, arranger, and couldn't be more pleased to have worked on that with her. The music is already done. We're starting principal photography May 1st, finishing by the beginning of July, and then editing time, get to November, go to AFM, and then have it released after the first of the year next year in time for Easter. It's a the outer story of it with the whole family is really fun. It's cute. The kids are really, we're in the process of casting. We've got some of these kids that are very, very, very precocious and fun. And I play the cantankerous grandpa, as you would think, after you've seen me in Knights of Swing. So good stuff. I'm very excited about it. And it's not one of those faith-based films that shoves it down your throat or is really preachy. It presents the story, and you make your decisions for yourself, because I don't like that other thing.
Yeah, exactly. I like the where it flows, and I like the faith-based films where it actually flows. It makes you just want, makes you, like you said, like you mentioned, makes you decide at the end. And there's a few films like that I really do enjoy. But Knights of Swing is an amazing film, and I hope everyone gets to check it out. As I said, it's on Tubi right now. If anyone wants to see it, and you all need to check this out because it might be a 2.5 hour movie, but once you get into that story, it's not going to feel like 2.5 hours. Plus, anyone who's a fan of music should definitely check this out. And Emilio, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk about this. I had such a great chat with you here.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much.
All right, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you.